I'd like to address a question that has been emailed to me concerning Jesus' words about there not being marriage in the age of the resurrection, we will be like the angels. The question has to do with what does this really mean, and what about romance in heaven? A lot of people actually ask this kind of question related to this. Not only what does he mean about marriage, or more so, usually the question is just, is that going to be good? I mean, there won't be marriage. And so I thought it would be a good question to address here, seeing the popularity of it. So before we look at the passage, I just want to bring the question up itself. It says, can you talk about the passage where Jesus says there will be no marriage in heaven / the new earth, and that we will be like the angels? I thought we were going to judge angels. I don't want to be like an angel. Does this mean there will be no more romance? God created marriage and called it good. Why would God end romance since he created it? What about those who are not able to have their romance fulfilled in this life? Is having their desire for romance destroyed by God in heaven the best they can look forward to? And will there be no more children? I know some women who were unable to have children, and their hearts ached and longed to be a mother. Is God going to tell them they don't need that desire anymore? Okay, let's just go look at the passage, and then we'll come back to it. So I'm going to go to Luke chapter 20. Actually, you can find this in Matthew and Mark too, but I'll read through the one in Luke 20. I'm not so concerned with everything that's going on in the context, so I'm going to read through that rather straightforwardly and quickly, okay? But the Sadducees came up to Jesus, and the Sadducees, as it says, do not believe in a resurrection. It also says in Acts that they don't believe in spirits or angels. And so, obviously, Jesus did, and so they bring this big question that is more than likely hypothetical as far as we can know. And in order to show, look, if you believe in a resurrection, how in the world would you explain this, okay? Obviously, they've never gotten a satisfying answer from those who do believe in the resurrection, like the Pharisees, or they would not have kept on asking the question. But they bring it to Jesus. Now, some of the Sadducees who say there is no resurrection came to him, and they question him, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies having a wife and he is childless, his brother should marry the wife and raise up seed for his brother. So much in the Old Testament economy and system of things was dependent and essential as far as a man's heritage continuing on, the 12 tribes continuing on as 12 tribes, and those family names going on for the sake of land possession and inheritance, and several other things. So there were many laws concerning this. One is this. If a man died, but he did not have a child yet, then the brother was supposed to do the good and noble thing, marry his wife, even if he was already married, and raise up a child in the name of his brother so that his brother's name would continue on. And that's the law. We won't go into it more than that. And so thus their situation here. They say, now there were 7 brothers, and the first married a wife and died childless, and the second, and the third married her, and in the same way, all 7 died, leaving no children. Finally, the woman died also. Therefore, this woman, in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? For all 7 had her as a wife. So they're saying, well, if you believe in a resurrection, then tell us, how do you answer this? Whose wife is she going to be? I mean, they were all married. Is she going to be the first? What about the others? Aren't they important? Jesus said to them, the sons of this age marry or are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain that age and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot even die anymore, because they are like angels, and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. He speaks about more things here, but that's all that we really need to concern ourselves here. So we see what he says. Now, let's touch on a few facts, get a few clarity on some facts before we address the question as a whole. Okay, first of all, the questioner does ask about the new earth, but let's be clear here. The best description we have of the age to come as far as labels goes, well, one of the more clear descriptions, or one of the better ones, I would say, is Peter calling it a new heaven and a new earth. I mean, that description is used by Peter and elsewhere too. That's a label that we have. Now, this passage here does not refer to us being in heaven. I mean, whatever other scriptures may say, this passage just says that we're going to be like the angels who are in heaven. Whether or not we're going to be in heaven, or it doesn't address that here, okay? It doesn't address the new earth, of course, but one thing that is labeled for where we will be is the new heaven and new earth. Okay, now, so the other thing is this first question here. I thought we were going to judge angels. Well, we are. Now, that's referenced in 1 Corinthians 6. The Corinthians who weren't doing too well, unable to judge between right and wrong in the situations that they were facing in their immaturity as Christians. And so he says, do you not know that you would judge angels? We don't have a lot of specifics on that. Probably means that we will share in Christ's judgment of the angels in his return, probably the bad angels. But the question is not so much on what does that mean, but saying, well, if we're going to judge the angels, then why are we going to be like them? Well, judging them doesn't have any connection on whether we'll be like them or not. We're going to judge the bad angels, I believe. I think that's what that's a reference to. But nevertheless, the only thing like them that we are going to share in this passage, at least as we learn from this passage, is just not dying and not marrying anymore. How much more we're going to be like the angels is not stated here. But perhaps that's all the questioner is interested in. The questioner says, I don't want to be like an angel. Well, as far as if the questioner means not marrying and give it in marriage, okay, but if the questioner is assuming we're going to be like the angels in other ways, remember, that's not stated in the text here anyway. I'll come back to this, but it says, does this mean there will be no more romance? Well, one thing that is clear from the passage that we just read is that there's not going to be any more marriage. I mean, it says that. There are some who would deny that to be the case. Our Mormon friends, of course. I was talking to Mormons once. I like having studies with the Mormons. It seems to be fruitful in many cases. And they said, do you like the idea of not being with your wife for eternity? And I said, I think being with my wife for eternity would be an amazingly great thing, especially in eternity, where I'm not going to be as flawed as I am now, or my spouse as well. I mean, if you're in eternity and you're married, yeah, that would be a great thing, sure enough, because neither one of you are going to be flawed anymore like you were, and how much better the marriage could be. I mean, as happy as a marriage would be here on earth, how much more so in the next one when you're done with sin and you don't have those problems anymore. I said that would be great, but since the Bible teaches that there's not going to be marriage, I'm sure that whatever it is going to be fulfilling. And it's going to be good for both my wife and myself. Let me say this. We know that God is not interested in us being dissatisfied. He's went out of his way. He says in one passage, or a Bible writer says, Paul, if God spared not his own son. God did not spare to give us the best that he had, his son. He clearly cares for us. And since, as the questioner concedes, he created marriage in the first place, we have this enjoyment of marriage and, the romance of husband and wife and of the pursuit of finding a wife or, a husband if you're a woman. Those things are great, sure enough. But they're good because they were created by God and they're by nature good. If God takes them away, it could only be because there's something superior to that. The question, the way it was worded in the email seems to assume that it can't be better than this. You see, yes, we enjoy romance and marriage now, or babies. And so the assumption seems to be, it can't be better than that. If that's not there, I just can't be happy. Well, I understand, but that's just assuming it can't be better than that. And even the attitude, which the question has not stated, but if anybody were to have it, well, I just don't think it can be better than that. It's just, well, I mean, remember, the Pharisees had such a problem of not knowing the power of God. We have to know, well, God can do, but God created that in the first place. And it would just be a immature thing. Again, I'm not saying that the person who asked this question has. I'm just saying in general. And this is a popular question asked by many people. Surely we wouldn't think that God can't do better. I mean, he just, that's all he's got. No, we wouldn't think that. So if he doesn't have it, it only must be because we are going to be happier without it. We're not going to be dissatisfied. You know, that can be pretty clear. You know, in Genesis chapter 2, when God created Eve, notice what it says. Then Yahweh God said, "It is not good." This is the Legacy Standard Bible. "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him." And he gave him his wife, Eve. But notice what he says, "It is not good." What we clearly see here is God was not satisfied to have a situation where man was in a situation where he was not in a good state. And so he said, I'm going to do something about that. It's not that he created a bad state. It just wasn't sufficient yet, and this needed to be seen. God's saying, I'm not done yet because it's not good. There's something better. So we know clearly that in the original creation, God was not satisfied or interested in man being in a less than good state. So if he's taking that away, did he change his mind? No, I think I want it to be not good. I want humans to be in a not good situation. No, it must be because it would hinder that which is better. The very fact that he goes on to say, they will be like the angels, neither will they die, shows that, no, we got a better thing going on here. See, we don't have the issues that you're talking about, you, the Sadducees, because we got something better going on. So my answer here is the same as I would say to my Mormon friends. Sure, it'd be great to have a marriage in eternal glory, especially as glorified people with having no sin and all that. That'd be a tremendous marriage. The fact that it's not going to be there, it must be that it is going to be better for both my wife and me that we don't be married. And by the way, you still have the situation where some people were married multiple times. And so that's the problem of the Sadducees. That's why this marriage thing is answered by Jesus' statement. Otherwise, you would have an issue. That's the implication. The reason that is not going to be a problem in the age of the resurrection is because you ain't going to have marriage. Neither will they be given in marriage. Who? He says, the sons of God there in Luke 20, those worthy to attain the resurrection. Those are those not going to be given in marriage. So my Mormon friends, I think you have this wrong. The sons of God and those worthy of the next life and the resurrection, he says, aren't going to be in marriage. They're not going to be given in marriage. But let me go back to the question then. It says, I don't want to be like the angel, or like the angels, or like an angel. Well, the angels aren't complaining. And I know this could raise the whole issue of the Nephilim and Genesis 6. I'm just not going to go there right now. I've got a video on that, by the way. I don't believe that angels married women. That's a popular view. Go back and look at my video on that. I gave you pretty strong scriptural evidence while that's not the case. But nevertheless, it doesn't even matter. The answers here are still the same. God, obviously, as seen in giving Adam a helper, a spouse, was not interested in him not being in a good situation. God is not interested in us being dissatisfied. He says, neither shall they die. There's not going to be death anymore. Death is not a completely terrible thing in this life. The reason man was cut off from the tree of life is so that he would in fact die. He said, go back and read that in Genesis 3. He said, lest man reach forth his hand and eat of the tree of life and live forever, let us cast him from the garden. God didn't want man to live forever here in a life of sin and iniquity and diseases and all the consequences of sin. So death actually has a good thing to it. It's actually better that we don't live forever and ever and ever in the way this life is now with the sin in the world. The reason we're not going to die in that world is because it's better to stick around. That's why. That's the ultimate good. See, God is bringing us to an ultimate good. So as far as romance, well, the Bible doesn't give many specifics on all those kinds of things. It's reasonable to conclude they won't be there if there's not going to be marriage, because that's properly carried out in marriage, and including, babies. But I say this, all it says, as far as this passage goes, is there's not going to be marriage. And it doesn't say much more than that. I mean, it's all speculation. But if there's not going to be marriage, it must be because we're going to be better off without it. Otherwise, it would be less than good. And God ain't changing his mind on us not being in good situations and in a good environment and things being good. So we could trust God on this. Otherwise, it is to assume that if these things do not happen, having babies as women carrying out, motherhood and the beauty of that, well, then we can't be happy. It can't be better than that. Or at least I won't be happy. Well, but you just have to realize we can only say that not having lived in the age of the resurrection yet. It's not uncommon for people to use children as an example, and it's a great example. Children they don't realize that when they grow up, the things that make them happy then just will not be so. This question about, will having their desire for romance destroyed by God in heaven be the best they could look forward to? No. It's not, I'm just going to destroy the desire. It's that it's going to be better. You're going to be happier, where that is just going to be not as great of an interest. We may not be able to know how that could be because we're not there yet. And we just got to realize that. Children, I remember when I was a child, I would see my dad watching the news, and I would see parents or adults watching the news, and I would see my dad watching war documentaries and things like that. And I think, how could anybody be interested in watching these things? There's cartoons. I mean, for the life of me, who would just not spend their time watching cartoons? I mean, war documentaries for Looney Tunes. I mean, I just didn't get it. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to think any different when I grow up. But you do. You don't know any difference because you haven't grown up. But as an adult, for me to spend all my time watching cartoons just wouldn't bring me the happiness that I thought that it did as a kid. As a matter of fact, sometimes I watch old cartoons with my children that I watched and loved as a child. Some of them I still find interesting, there's no doubt about it. But I watch them now as an adult with my children and enjoy it in that regard. But then I think, that wasn't exactly like I thought it was when I was a child. It seemed, first of all, it seemed longer, and it seemed more interesting back then. I mean, you can tell yourself all day long, no, I can't imagine having happiness without those things. Well, that's just because we don't know what it would be. And once we acknowledge that and realize that, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. God is not going to leave us unhappy. It is not good for man to be alone. He created marriage so man would not be living in a state that's not good. So to take it away, or for it not to be there, that would hinder a better state of affairs in the afterlife. There's not going to be disappointment. As a matter of fact, I think these things are great. But I certainly hope that God is going to do better than these things if they're involved. We're talking romance, babies, things the Bible doesn't really talk about. You can get implications and whatnot from certain texts. But I certainly expect God, and I know it to be the case, it's going to be better than that. The Bible talks about it being glory, honor, and immortality. It calls it the joy of the Lord. So we know God He knows what He's doing. If marriage won't be there, it's because it would only hinder a better state of affairs. And so we just have to remember these things. And so no, these women that had these lifelong disappointments like this, or people who didn't get to experience romance or such like states, no, there's much better things to look forward to. God knows what He's doing, and we could trust Him. And so I hope that helps. to know that God has every interest in our well-being and us being in a state of affairs that is good. So, God bless you.